Hey y'all, welcome back to CRxOWN Talks. I'm Dr. Reagan, and this is where we break down the healthcare questions that you wish you'd asked and the ish they should have told you. Now, a lot of women hit their 40s and start asking, what's wrong with me? Brain fog and anxiety while still trying to perform can be overwhelming. Well, today we're joined by Dr. Agena Renee Davenport, an OB-GYN speaker, coach. She specializes in helping high performing women navigate perimenopause, brain fog, and ADHD, especially when it starts to impact their confidence and performance at work and in life. She brings both clinical expertise and lived experience to this conversation, and I'm really excited to have her here. Welcome, Dr. Agena Renee.
Thank you, Dr. Reagan. Appreciate you having me on.
Now let's jump straight into the rundown.
Yes.
What's one myth about perimenopause you wish high performing women would stop believing?
Well, this is something that I wish all women would stop believing. I feel like all of us are high performing in different ways. But one thing that I wish they would stop believing is that they've lost their edge or that something is inherently terribly wrong. And where that usually comes from is the brain fog and feeling like I used to be able to do all these things and juggle all these balls. Why am I not doing it now? So what I want them to understand is that it's not a failing on your part at all. This is just biology, and you just need different support systems.
That's really important. And thank you for the distinction on high performing women look different ways, right? They don't all look like maybe what we think in our mind. And probably all of us think that we're high performing in some way or another. So it's a really good point. Do you want to say anything more about how you defined high performing?
When I think about high performing women, yes, of course, the first thing that comes to mind might be someone who's a professional working in corporate, maybe even in leadership, like I was, um, in very demanding jobs. But I would say stay at home moms are high performing as well. I have never been a stay at home mom full time, but that is also a very high performing job. You're a CEO of your home. You are managing so many different things and schedules and making sure the kids get the food and the nutrition they need. It's just a lot of different things. You could be a high performing midlife woman who is taking care of aging parents like myself, who who have chronic illnesses and things that they need help with. And that also requires a lot of planning, executive function, and organization. And we find at this time in life, at just the time when we need it the most, it feels like it's starting to crumble.
Absolutely. Now, how do these hormonal changes actually affect the brain, like with our focus, mood,
Yeah.
memory?
Yes. So this is a great question, Dr. Reagan. And I think a lot of research is starting. We're at the very infancy stage of the research coming out now, and I'm really excited about it. But basically, what's happening is that estrogen, which starts to decline in the perimenopause phase, which by the way isn't late 40s like I was taught even in residency, really starts around 35 to 45 is perimenopause for most women. So that's a time where you're not quite seeing the changes in your periods, or maybe you are, but even without skipped periods, those hormonal fluctuations are already happening. So what it can look like is all of a sudden you didn't have PMS before, all of a sudden you do now. You're more moody, anxious, can't focus, kids get on your nerve, husband getting on your nerve, then your period comes and you're like, oh, that was it. you know? And so what happens is even in that second half of your period, the estrogen is lower. So as the estrogen declines, that directly impacts dopamine. And dopamine is the brain chemical that really is part of the executive function and being able to manage and organize and just start a task. So when that starts to decline and dopamine is also declining, and women with ADHD, which we can talk about later, they already have a dopamine deficit. Everything just seems to like converge and make you feel like, who is this woman? I don't recognize her.
I definitely want to talk about ADHD later because I think that's something that a lot of people who have never been diagnosed with ADHD start to feel like they're having that in this stage of life. But back to something else you said just now about your period changes even at 35 and earlier. Yes, I have a lot of people in my friend group and I'm well over 40 now, but a lot of people in my friend group, we all started noticing these changes in
Mhm,
long before cycles started fluctuating in length,
mhm,
whether they were coming at all or whatever. It was, oh, I never had cramps before. Now I do. I never had this before. Now I do. So
mhm.
I think
Yes.
it's a really important for one thing we like to talk to is younger women coming up and
Mhm.
saying, okay, you're not at this stage yet, but there's no developmental stage that we talk about like we do children with women over
Yeah.
time to ensure that you're ready for this next stage of life. So this
Mhm.
is something women out there so you can know what the symptoms are when they come. Now,
Yes.
why do so many women say, I don't feel like myself during this time?
Well, they say that because they truly don't feel like themselves. They feel like I know for me, I felt like a shell of myself. I felt like who is this person? Like I used to be able to hit the ground running on these projects, or I used to be able to keep all my appointments and the kids' appointments in my head. If I don't write it down now, it's going to be missed. Just know 90% of the time, I'm not going to remember. And so your memory starts to fail you. You feel like, oh my gosh, am I going crazy? And that is a common thing that my patients will come and say to me. And it's a really hard time because these are women who are used to leading large teams. I had one patient who was like, they keep putting more and more work on me because I am capable, but now all of a sudden I can't keep up. I can't keep up. Why can't I keep up? And what I want you, the audience, to know, it's not a matter of capability. You are still capable. You're more than capable. You just need different types of support for the way your brain is changing now due to the hormones.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something so important of you feeling like you don't have the energy or whatever to complete the task that you're used to. What
Mhm.
are you seeing in workplaces when these symptoms aren't recognized?
Yes. So in workplaces, it can be daunting, right? So um, I suffered with this myself. You know, I'm very vulnerable and tell my story to whoever will listen. I was in academic medicine for 13 years. I left academic medicine literally about 6 months ago.
Mm,
And I was very good at my job. I was an excellent clinician. I loved my patients. I loved teaching. I loved mentorship. And I even rose to the ranks of becoming a residency program director over 36 residents. And it was a challenging job for me as someone who is an empath, as someone who wants everyone to like me. But basically, the hardest challenge was having that extra administrative time and feeling like, and which coincided with my perimenopause, beginning of my perimenopause journey in my late 30s. Um, and even I, as an OB-GYN, didn't realize what was happening. So
mhm,
don't feel bad. Because we're just now talking about it more,
mhm,
really.
mhm.
So please just talk to your doctor, talk to a psychiatrist, like a therapist, a coach, because we need to start normalizing this and take away the stigma because in the workplace, it can feel isolating. I know I felt like everybody else seems to be keeping up. What am I missing? Well, the whole time I was still performing very well. I led a very successful program. I was also vocal about my ADHD that was just diagnosed in my late 30s in perimenopause. And we'll talk about diagnosis because it's not that I just developed it. It's that it was unmasked in my
Yeah.
midlife journey. So we'll talk about that. But long story short, I just felt like I don't know if I can handle it all. So I found supports for myself where I felt the system didn't really catch up with me. I had to find it for myself. I went out and found a coach. I went out and did a leadership course. I went out and also talked to my therapist about what was going on. And all of that put together really gave me great scaffolding and foundation to help me succeed in this very, very daunting leadership role at the time.
That's really important. I think you talk a little bit about how your identity was kind of impacted, your confidence is impacted, but I really want you to talk a little bit more about the ADHD and how it unmasked the
Mhm.
ADHD versus a new diagnosis.
Yes. So um, I I love talking about this topic because it hits so close to home because of my diagnosis 5 years ago in the height of the pandemic, and it was
Mm.
2021 at that time. And my perimenopause and the leadership role had just started. Everything was just combined into one. So, what happens with ADHD is that a lot of women have ADHD, but they just were never diagnosed. And the reason is the typical look of ADHD in the past had been, oh, the very disruptive, hyperactive child.
Mhm. Mhm.
I wasn't that. And I was, if anything, very not disturbing to the class. I was daydreaming, I was falling asleep, but yet still making great grades, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't get to being a doctor by not being smart, but because I did have to work harder than my peers, I had internalized anxiety and depression. And I now realize that part of that was probably because of untreated or undiagnosed ADHD. So when
Wow.
I came to my late 30s, I was having that breakdown moment. I actually even had suicidal thoughts. And that's when I was like, I got to see a psychiatrist. I wasn't taking any medications at that time. My psychiatrist did what a lot of people do, for many reasons. She wanted to treat me for depression first, even though I, as a physician, said, I think I might have ADHD. She's like, yeah, but the symptoms can commingle, and it's true. We'll talk about
Yeah.
that. And so she treated me for that. A few weeks later, I followed up with her. I was like, well, I feel a little bit more pep in my step, but I'm still a basket case. I can't remember anything. And she was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get you tested for ADHD. I want you to have the full test. So I went to a neuropsychiatrist. He did a 3-hour in-person intense. I knew I was feeling it as we were doing it. Um, so I was diagnosed with ADHD inattentive type. So there's two types, um, hyperactive type and inattentive type. And there's also a third. So there's three types. There's combined type, which has traits of both. And so the hyperactive type looks more like impulsivity, can't help but cut people off in the middle of conversations because if they don't get what they need to say out, they're going to forget. It's just like they look like they're on a motor.
Mhm.
Whereas the inattentive is more like kind of easily distracted. And although they say it's attention deficit, it's really a misnomer because we pay attention a lot. It's just too many things at the same time. So it look like we can't attend to one thing at a time is really what it is.
Interesting. That I mean, as you're talking, I'm seeing myself, but I'm also seeing even my son, like in
Listen, I could do a
how.
whole nother talk on raising neurodivergent children. Both of my children have it. And when my son, who's now 17 and thriving, was diagnosed at age 7, I still didn't see it in myself. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where he got that from. But as the years went on and I was trying to really understand this thing, like when he would forget to do stuff, like I thought it was defiance. I thought it was laziness, but
Yes.
it was like literally he could go in a room, you tell him to go turn off the light in the closet, and he come back and it didn't get done. This is a real story. I said, no, Elijah, what happened when you went in there? Because the light is still on that I actually turned off. We were going to bed. He was like, oh, I saw the scale, so I decided to weigh myself. Like
Yeah.
that's it. And that's when it hit for me. I was like, my son is a really good kid. He is not trying to be um, defiant or willfully lazy. There is something else. And then I also started to see myself in him, like having to come in and out of the house multiple times because I forgot the keys, I forgot this, I forgot that. And then my neurotypical husband at the time was like, y'all bugging. Like he just didn't get it. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. I know it's going to help a lot of women out there as they think through what kind of their symptoms are looking like and how these things may be intersecting in ways that they weren't thinking about.
Mhm.
Now, you talked a little bit about this already, but when should someone seek help and where do they start?
Great question. So I think you should seek help anytime you feel like your symptoms are affecting your quality of life. If you're not getting things done at work, if you feel like, the kids are all over the place and you can't seem to really get them to their appointments on time, or it's really affecting your quality of life. And it doesn't have to be extreme. I would say as soon as you start to notice the brain fog, talk about it. Talk to your gynecologist, talk to your primary care physician. And if they're not well versed in it, don't be afraid to get a second opinion. I really would recommend finding someone who is used to treating women in perimenopause, um, with either whether they need hormones or not, but also have that extra knowledge, if possible, that extra knowledge of how it affects mental health.
So important because I think a lot of our primary care providers out here just don't have the knowledge, the range, et
Yeah.
cetera. We still have some primary care folks saying, citing old estrogen studies around breast
Oh,
cancer.
yeah.
So you really, really, really take Dr. Agena Renee's advice. And if your primary care provider is not well versed, find one who is. Okay.
Yes, and and that's where the conversation can start, but also seek out other healthcare providers that can help you through this journey, including therapists, psychiatrists. Um, I just came back from speaking at the Black Psychiatrists of America national meeting last week in New Orleans. And I talked specifically on this topic, on the intersection of the hormonal changes in midlife and the unmasking of ADHD and autism even. So the conversations are starting to happen.
Yeah.
And there was so much interest in the room. I had a line of people waiting to talk to me afterwards because this is something that they see. They're seeing it and they're putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
I even was guilty of brushing patients off or trying to treat something else when it was this, because I didn't know. We just didn't have the knowledge. So the exciting thing is a lot of more people are waking up and trying to get that extra training.
It is exciting. It's exciting that we're making the connection now because I think you're right. As a nurse practitioner, that's what I've done too. It's like you see this. So now I'm treating the ADHD separate of the whatever as hormone replacement that we're doing, but they're all interconnected. And if we don't look at it that way, then
Mhm.
it's not going to be holistic enough for patients to, or myself. Okay, let me talk about me. It's not going to help me,
Yeah,
in the long run because you're not
exactly.
looking at it holistically.
Exactly. I just had an OB who told me she had a patient who she thought had ADHD, and she told her so, based on her symptoms and her history, because it has to have been present in childhood. That's a big thing to note here. You don't just get ADHD out of the blue. There had to have been symptoms before, but the patient, she treated her with hormones for her other symptoms, and it didn't help her brain fog. And that's one thing I want you all to know is that hormones are not the end all be all. They help with a lot of different symptoms. They can definitely help with sleep, hot flashes, which then inherently helps with some brain fog, right? Because if
Yeah.
you're not sleeping, your brain's not going to work optimally. And
Right.
so sleep is so important. We could do a whole talk on sleep. But for sake of time, I'll say sleep is important. Sleep hygiene is very important. And with the patient that my OB friend talked about was she treated her with hormones, but then once she finally started a stimulant or like a small dose of 5 for ADHD, she was 10 times better. So, sometimes you got to like treat, there's a multidisciplinary approach.
Right.
Our
Right.
bodies are very complex as women, like the hormones, the ups and downs, the weight gain, the everything is all it's all connected.
The weight gain, we for sure could have a whole
So
Oh
did I.
yes, I'm with you, sister.
and not even it's just not the weight gain, it's the inability to get it off too. Um,
That's the most frustrating part
Mhm.
because it used to be easier. Mhm.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, before we get out of here, if someone is listening and thinking, this is me, what's the first step or the next step you'd want them to kind of take?
Well, the next step, because the first step was you coming to watch this, so thank you. And thank you, Dr. Reagan, for having me on. But the next step is seeking support. Like I said, your brain is not damaged, it just needs different types of support. And that may come in the form of medication. I know for me, medication doesn't, I've tried a lot of different ones. It doesn't always work for me. And that's the story of a lot of people with ADHD, actually, that we don't really talk about. But there's other things you can do. What you can do immediately is really dive into your nutrition, make sure you're getting enough sleep. Exercise is big, not only for ADHD, but also menopause, perimenopausal symptoms, hot flashes, all of that. Um, Watching your alcohol intake can also help with menopausal symptoms. And getting help in different ways. So therapy, like I said, but also coaching. Coaching was life changing for me. And the difference with coaching is that this is someone who kind of walks with you on your journey forward and kind of helps you come up with the answers and guide you into what kind of things are holding you back from being your best and truest self, and can also help specifically with some ADHD and executive function symptoms. And that's actually what I've now poured my heart into. I am a coach for women in midlife who are perimenopausal or menopausal, high performing, and we talked about what that means, and also might be struggling with some of this brain fog and executive function things and have ADHD. So through my story, I hope I give back to other women who are facing similar challenges, because I know I wish I had more of that, or more community around that. So if you want to work with me, my website is dragenarenee.com. Very easy. Doctor is spelled out, DOCTOR, all one word, Dr. Agena Renee. And we'll also have information below how to set up a discovery call.
Hi, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm super excited to have you share your heart with us and share your experience and help me and other women out there understand what is happening with them is okay and it's normal, and it's okay to seek help about it too.
Yes, it's vital.
Vital. Now, this has been your health check-in with Crown Talks. If you love this, follow us at Crown Talks on social media, share with someone who you think needs to hear it, and subscribe to Crown Talks wherever you get your podcast medicine. Consider yourselves crown secured.
Yes. Yes, queen. Thank you.
All right.